In 1988, Cher won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her performance in Moonstruck. From being a singer whose acting abilities had once been questioned, she became one of the few entertainers to reach the highest level in both music and film. This was followed by hit songs such as If I Could Turn Back Time and Believe, along with a series of sold-out tours that firmly established Cher as an icon of constant reinvention. Success continued to follow success, but time also gave Cher a different perspective on her past. The emotions that had once been filled with anger and regret were gradually replaced by acceptance and peace. She no longer saw Sonny Bono as the man who had caused the collapse of their marriage, but as someone who had helped shape the person she had become. It was this change in perspective that made Cher's reflections on Sonny in later years so much more meaningful. They were no longer simply the story of a famous couple, but the memories of a woman who had lived long enough to understand that some people, even after they stop walking beside us, remain an irreplaceable part of our lives. There is something especially remarkable about the way Cher speaks about Sonny Bono. Immediately after their divorce, she rarely mentioned him. When she did, it was usually in connection with the hardships of their marriage, the feeling of being controlled, and the pain they had caused one another. At that time, the distance between them was not merely the result of a divorce, but also the collapse of a relationship that had once been admired by the entire world. But time has a remarkable way of healing people. As the intense emotions of youth gradually faded, Cher began to see Sonny from a different perspective. She no longer remembered only the man who had hurt her. She remembered the young man who met her when she was just 16 years old, who gave her her very first opportunity in music, and who was the first person to believe that an insecure young girl could become a star. In many interviews over the years, Cher has repeatedly said that her life would have been completely different had she never met Sonny Bono. Although their marriage did not have a happy ending, she has never denied the important role he played in shaping both her life and her career. She has always openly acknowledged that they made mistakes, that there were regrets, but also that there were wonderful moments no one could ever erase. On one occasion, when asked whether she had truly gotten over Sonny, Cher simply smiled and said that there are some people you never completely move on from. They may no longer be present in your life, but they remain in your memories, in the lessons they taught you, and in the person you eventually become. That is not necessarily romantic love anymore, but rather a bond so deep that time itself can never erase it. That is why, as the years passed, Cher spoke less about the things that had hurt her and much more about gratitude. She was grateful because Sonny had changed the course of her life. Grateful because together they had created songs that people still love decades later. And grateful because, despite everything that had happened, they eventually found a way to respect each other as two people who had shared one of the most important chapters of their lives. That is also why, when tragedy struck at the beginning of 1998, Cher did not simply lose a former husband. She lost a friend, a companion from her youth, and someone who had been woven into some of the most irreplaceable memories of her life. In that moment, she realized there were words left unsaid, forgiveness left unspoken, and some people whose true importance only becomes clear once they are gone forever. On the 5th of January 1998, Sonny Bono was on a family skiing holiday at Heavenly Ski Resort in California when tragedy struck. While skiing, he collided with a tree and died at the age of 62. The news spread rapidly, leaving America in shock. To the public, it was the loss of an entertainer who had helped shape the history of pop music. But for Cher, it was the moment when a significant part of her youth disappeared forever. Those who were with her at the time later recalled that Cher was almost speechless when she received the news. Even though they had been divorced for more than 20 years, she could hardly believe that the man who had stood beside her during the earliest days of her career was suddenly gone. Death always comes too quickly, and it rarely gives us another chance to mend what has been left unfinished. In the days that followed, Cher put almost everything else aside to be with Sonny's family. She was there not as a global superstar, but as someone who had once been family. She spent time comforting their children, talking with old friends, and helping everyone prepare for Sonny's funeral. The moment that touched people most deeply came when Cher stepped up to deliver a tribute during the nationally televised memorial service. Millions watched, but the woman standing at the microphone was no longer the strong and fearless goddess of pop. She became emotional several times, pausing to compose herself before continuing to speak about the man who had changed her life. Cher did not try to portray Sonny as a perfect person. She openly admitted that they had argued, hurt each other, and gone through many difficult years together. But then she said something that left the entire room in silence. That Sonny was one of the most unforgettable people she had ever known. And although their marriage had ended long ago, she would always be grateful that they had once shared the dream they built together. The tears she shed that day were not simply for the loss of an old friend. They were also for everything that would never have the chance to be said. After many years, they had finally learned to respect one another, to speak again as friends, and to look back on the past with compassion. But fate gave them no more time. Even years later, whenever Cher speaks about that day, she admits that the sense of loss has never completely disappeared. Not because she still lives in the past, but because Sonny remains an irreplaceable part of her life story. Some people enter your life when you are both very young, grow alongside you, and help create things you once believed impossible. Even if your paths eventually lead in different directions, that bond continues to exist somewhere deep within your heart. Now in her 80s, Cher still possesses the remarkable energy that continues to amaze people. She still performs and appears in public with the presence of a true entertainment icon, but her perspective on life has changed profoundly since her younger years. On one occasion, she shared a very simple thought. Life does not always give us a perfect love story. Some people stay with us forever, while others accompany us only for part of the journey. What truly matters is not how long they remain, but how deeply they change us. Perhaps that is also why, despite the relationships she experienced later in life, Cher has never denied Sonny's unique place in her heart. He was not the last man she loved, but he was undoubtedly the first person who made her believe in herself. He saw a future star at a time when everyone else saw only an insecure young girl. Looking back on the journey of her life, Cher has never tried to rewrite the past to make it either more beautiful or more painful than it truly was. She accepts it exactly as it happened, with both its happiness and its heartbreak. And perhaps that is precisely what makes her reflections in later life so deeply moving. Not because they tell the story of a famous romance, but because they remind us that true love is not measured only by the years we spend together. Sometimes it is found in the gratitude that remains unchanged, even long after someone we loved has gone. If you were to ask who has reinvented herself more successfully than anyone else in Hollywood history, many people would mention just one name: Cher. For more than 60 years, she has transformed herself time and time again, from an unknown young woman to a pop music star, then an Academy Award-winning actress, a fashion icon, and one of the most successful entertainers of all time. Every time the public believed Cher's career had reached its end, she surprised the world with a new chapter even more remarkable than the last. But one thing has never changed. It is the way she speaks about one man whenever she reflects on her life. He was not the wealthiest. He was not the most famous, nor was he the love who stayed with her the longest. So what is it that, even after decades of separation and long after he left this world, still moves Cher to tears whenever she speaks his name? Now approaching the age of 80, with nothing left to prove to anyone, Cher has begun sharing more of the memories she kept hidden deep within her heart. Those reflections reveal not only one of Hollywood's most famous love stories, but also the truth that some people, even after they are gone, remain an inseparable part of our lives forever. That is the story we are going to revisit today. In the early 1960s, before the world knew the name Cher, she was simply a teenage girl named Sherilyn Sarkeesian trying to find her place in Los Angeles. Born into a family of modest means, Cher's childhood was marked by constant moves, instability, and the feeling that she had to grow up far too quickly. At the age of 16, her life changed when she met Sonny Bono. More than 10 years older than Cher, Sonny was working in the music industry and dreaming of becoming a record producer. At first, their relationship was simple. Sonny gave Cher a place to stay, introduced her to people in the music business, and encouraged the young woman to believe in her own abilities. Over time, that companionship gradually blossomed into love. Before long, they began singing together and realized they shared an extraordinary musical chemistry. Cher's distinctive deep husky voice, combined with Sonny's musical style, created a sound unlike anything else in the American music scene at the time. In 1965, the song "I Got You Babe" unexpectedly became a global sensation, transforming Sonny and Cher from unknown performers into one of the most famous couples in the world. Audiences loved them not only for their music, but also for the image of a couple who always stood side by side. On stage, on television, and on magazine covers, Sonny and Cher became symbols of love throughout the 1960s. Few people knew that Sonny was the very first person to believe Cher could become a star, even when she herself was still filled with self-doubt. From the outside, Sonny and Cher seemed to be the couple everyone admired. They had chart-topping hits, a successful television program, millions of fans, and a growing family with the birth of their son, Chaz Bono. Their constant appearances together convinced many people that they were the perfect example of love and success existing side by side. But life behind the scenes was entirely different. As their careers flourished, Sonny became not only Cher's husband, but also her manager and the person making almost every major decision about her career. While she was still very young, Cher accepted that role because she trusted the man who had helped introduce her to the entertainment industry. But over time, she began to feel that she no longer had the freedom to make decisions about her own life. She later admitted that she was gradually losing both her voice and her independence within the marriage. The distance between them grew even greater as personal problems continued to emerge. Cher later acknowledged that Sonny had been unfaithful on several occasions, while she herself no longer felt the love and respect she had experienced during the early years of their relationship. The music that had once united them so powerfully was no longer enough to mend the growing cracks in their marriage. After more than 10 years together, Cher realized that if she stayed, she would forever remain a supporting character in someone else's story. In 1975, she filed for divorce. It was not only the end of a marriage, but also the first time Cher truly had to learn how to live as an independent woman. Years later, she came to see that decision not as a rejection of everything they had shared. On the contrary, Cher has always acknowledged that Sonny changed her life in a way no one else ever could. He recognized the potential in the young girl she once was, helped her step onto the stage for the very first time, and built with her one of the most celebrated partnerships in music history. Their marriage came to an end, but Sonny's influence on Cher's life never truly disappeared. It simply took many years before she could look back on it all with peace instead of the pain of youth. After separating from Sonny, Cher hoped she could quickly begin a new chapter in her life. She married singer Gregg Allman just days after her divorce was finalized, but that marriage almost immediately descended into crisis because of problems involving alcohol and drugs. The couple divorced, reunited in an attempt to save their family, and eventually separated for good in 1979. Years later, Cher looked back on that period as a time when she was trying to heal from old emotional wounds. But she also came to realize that no relationship could ever replace the past. The only thing she could do was keep moving forward and build a life of her own. That was also when Cher devoted herself completely to her career. The 1980s and 1990s witnessed one of Hollywood's most remarkable reinventions. She released a string of successful hit songs while also earning the respect of critics by successfully making the transition into film.